Oh, hi everyone, Marcus here and welcome to the channel. And today guys, I will be comparing the Jordan 34s with the KD12s. A lot of you have been requesting me to do this, so let's get it on. So first up, before I do the comparison, I would just like to remind you guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so guys, and like this video afterwards, smash that button, and of course share this video with your friends and families. And if you want to watch the full performance review of each of the sneaker, I'll be putting up a link up here or maybe down in the description below for the full performance reviews. Of course guys, we start off first with the uppers of these two shoes. The Jordan 34s has this transparent mesh upper. It's kind of like net, but this is my pair. A lot of other colorways of the Jordan 34s have different materials, and they recently came out with the Jordan 34 SE, which has leather in it and has an overlap and a zipper with the upper, so that completely has a different material. But other colorways of the Jordan 34s have a different kind of mesh, like the ones that you see on the Element 87s. They have that on the Jordan 34, but with my pair, it has this netted mesh upper. And comparing it with the upper of the KD12s, which also have that similar net upper, but which I think it's a lot softer compared to the material on the 34s. Plus it has a coaxial access wire underneath that see-through mesh. In terms of performance, both uppers are very supportive. Durability wise, very nice in terms of the material of the netted mesh. But I've heard some stories on the Jordan 34s where some areas, like in the lacing system, some have defects, so we'll get into that later on. But in terms of the material of the uppers of the 34s and the KD12s are awesome. They're very breathable and they're very light, which is very nice. And in terms of break-in time, the KD12 doesn't need that much break-in time compared to the Jordan 34's upper, which you need to break it in a bit more because the mesh of the 34s is a lot thicker compared to the KD12s. So little break-in time on the 34s. Moving on to the back part of the sneaker, the heel. In terms of material, the 34s has this suede material on my colorway, while the KD12 still has mesh. And in terms of performance, very nice heel containment, ankle protection, especially in the 12s, which I think has a lot more ankle protection compared to the 34s, which is considered a low. But in terms of containment, there is no heel slippage in both sneakers. It's just a matter of preference. If you want a more low cut sneaker, go with the 34s. While if you want a more high cut sneaker, of course, go with the KD12s, which has a lot more ankle protection. And moving on to the lacing system of these two sneakers, I would say they're pretty much the same. Pretty easy to lace it up, but I would give a slight advantage on the KD12s because the laces on the KD12s is different compared to the 34s in the aspect of when you're playing. The 34's laces sometimes loosens up compared to the KD12's, which laces doesn't loosen up at all. That's another advantage on the KD12's, which I like. And in terms of tongue, if you want a more minimal tongue, go with the 34's. It's a very flat tongue, very minimal. While if you want more comfort, more like a towel material, go with the KD12's. It's very plush, and when it touches your feet, it's very comfortable. So it really depends on your preference. If you want a thicker material, go with the KD12's tongue, and of course 34's if you want a more minimal tongue. And in terms of lateral support, I would say I would give it a tie on both. Both have very nice lateral support. Really contains your foot very well to the footbed. You are not sleeping anywhere in the footbed. But an advantage of the 34s compared to the KD12s is it's a lot wider on the base of the forefoot area. As you can see, 34s are wider compared to the KD12s. So if you want stability on your step, especially in the forefoot area, this really goes well to those who wants to plant their foot really quickly when they're going for a jump shot. The 34 has a better advantage on that compared to a narrower KD12s, but if you're used to a narrow sneaker, that won't be a problem. But if you're someone who plays with a wide sneaker like the 34s, you would like this better, especially if you are a shooter and you want to plant your feet quickly on the floor to get your jump shot off. While the KD12s, if you're more into a shifty guard and if you want more traction in the medial part of the sneaker, the KD12s has an extra traction going up on the medial side of the traction. Of course, if you have a narrow foot, you would like a narrow sneaker like the KD12s. So it really depends on the preference again. Both sneakers carries the best cushion technology of Nike, which is Zoom. On the 34s, it is implemented in the forefoot area. It has a very large zoom unit that is unlocked. You can see it peeking in the eclipse plate, and it's very bouncy in the forefoot area, while the KD12s has a full length zoom strobel, which means your strobo board is a zoom unit, not a fabric, not a cardboard, but the zoom itself. The main difference that I see in this two cushion setup is if you want it to be more comfortable when you step, especially if your go-to move or you're more of a guard who uses your heel first before going up and explode with that movement, or planting your 2 foot down like that and going for an explosive movement. The zoom strobel on the KD12s works perfectly on that move. You will maximize the full length zoom with that movement where you step in most of the zoom unit, and plus it feels very comfortable and very bouncy, while the J34's forefoot zoom is very bouncy, and you would want this kind of setup if you'd like to have a more stable plate below your forefoot area before jumping or before landing. Then you will feel the bounciness of the zoom. That is where the J34 has its advantage, because not all people like to step on an uneven surface like the KD12s for a flatter, more stable landing on your sneaker. So it really depends on your preference. And another thing to consider in terms of impact protection, I would give it more to the KD12s because the cushion, the phylon that they uses on the J34s is locked in this cup and on the eclipse plate, so it doesn't expand that much, which the KD12s, you're stepping on zoom on your heel and there's an extra puck of zoom below that zoom unit, which I don't feel at all. Maybe if you really have a hard landing on your heel, then you'll feel the extra puck of zoom unit. But in terms of impact protection, I would go with the KD12s. Now let's move on to the traction of both sneakers. Both sneakers on a very clean court performs really well. The traction is very grippy, and I would say I would give a slight advantage on the KD12 because it has a gnarlier bite compared to the J34s. But I'm not saying that the traction of the 34s are bad. It's just that it's not as gnarly as the ones in the KD12s. But the KD12s and the 34s, you need to break the traction in to get that maximum traction feel. Plus, another thing to consider on the KD12s, go with the solid rubber outsole. I wouldn't say the same thing with the translucent outsole. I experienced that. My first pair of KD12s has translucent outsole, which was good on a clean court, but on a dusty court, it was really bad. While my KD12s with solid rubber outsole, my IDs and the Cancer on Pearl Edition are very good even on a dusty court. And as for sizing, true to size on regular footers. Wide footers, maybe go half a size up on both. And just a reminder guys, both sneakers are very narrow in terms of the toe space, especially the KD12s, which is narrower compared to the 34s. So a little thing to consider on that aspect. But overall, I really love both sneakers to play with. They are very comfortable. They have their certain strengths. It really depends on your preference. And as for the price point of these two sneakers, the KD12s is 7,200 pesos or around 140 US dollars, while the Jordan 34s is 8,500. I'm not sure right now, and it's around 170 to 180 US dollars. So the KD12 is cheaper by $20 to $25 or around 1,000 to 1,500 pesos. So which sneaker would I recommend? Like I've said, it really depends on your preference. If you want a zoom straw bell right below your foot and you like a high cut sneaker with extra ankle protection, excellent traction, KD12 is the way to go. But if you want a low cut sneaker with a very stable base, especially in the forefoot area and a very bouncy forefoot, go with the J34s. And I would say both sneakers are very responsive. Even though they're not really that close to the ground, you will still feel very quick with these sneakers. So that's about it on my comparison between the KD12s and the Jordan 34. Let me know which sneaker would you choose. Hit me a comment down below. Again guys, thank you for your support. This has been Marches. Adios.